We go now to a familiar face on this broadcast, former Face the Nation moderator and now 60 Minutes correspondent John Dickerson. He's the author of a new book that's coming out on Tuesday. It's called The Hardest Job in the World, the American Presidency. John, good to have you here.
Great to be back, Margaret. Great to see you.
So you say the American presidency is in trouble, it's overburdened, misunderstood, and an almost impossible job to do. And you started writing this before the pandemic, before the economic crisis, and before the current racial strife that we are in. I mean, we seem to be beyond the cliche of this is a stress test on our democracy. How are you thinking of where we are?
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, the book was finished before those three challenges, but they highlight a central point of the book, which is I went back and tried to look at the blueprint of the office. What is it really at its most basic level? And what it is a job where big, high-stakes things happen that are surprises to the president and where everybody, the president on down, needs to have created a system for dealing with those kinds of emergencies so they can be ready when the crisis hits. Because when the crisis hits, it's too late to kind of get ready on the fly. Gautam Mukunda is a professor at Harvard, and he says the presidency is like an airbag. You may not think about it all the time, but when there's an emergency, you want it to work.
So the excuse, well, no one could have seen this coming, you're saying the office is designed with that assumption that you need to be prepared for the thing you don't see coming.
That's right. That's why LBJ referred to the office, pardon me, morning viewers, as like being a jackass in a hailstorm, because sometimes you just have to take it. And what that means is the job holds you to an extremely high standard. And the reason it's important to take responsibility, even for something that you didn't create, is because that sets everybody's priorities. It tells everybody on your political team, you know what, spinning won't work. I've put my reputation on the line here. The buck stops with me. And you better all solve this problem because my future is at stake if we don't deliver results. And don't put any energy into spinning this. And that's why the office is so hard. It's why we treat it with such reverence and seriousness, because you're in a position where the buck stops with you.
But as you write in the book, President Trump has sort of changed that or challenged that assumption when he says things like, no, I don't take responsibility for anything with this pandemic.
He has, and in fact, that's why he was elevated to the office, because people looked at this office in which we ask a president to do too much and with tools that are either broken or which he wasn't given in the first place. A lot of what the president's been asked to do for the last several presidencies really is better housed in Congress or with governors or with mayors. But we ask the president to do it because we run everything through the presidency, which is why I wanted to take a look at what the office actually should do. President Trump was brought in by people who said, dismantle lots of it. Don't pay attention to a lot of these rules and norms. And so he is both someone to evaluate, but also because of that behavior, he's an incredible measuring instrument for us to take a look at the office and say, well, do we want this? Do we not want that? And what should we replace it with?
Well, we are 5 months out from this election. And I wonder, given all the stresses, how you're thinking of the actual process, because it feels like the institutions are undergoing some real crisis in confidence from the public. And just the functioning, the mechanics of our democracy are being called into question, being able to vote in November. How are you thinking of this?
Well, exactly. Let's start on the voting in November. One of the key things for a president, for any national conversation, and again, we run them all through the presidency, which isn't always great, but if we look at the next election, this is one of those problems. It's on the horizon. It is not yet in our lap. The administration and different agencies have been looking at the elections because they're worried about them being interfered with by the Russians or the Chinese. Now we have another problem with COVID-19. This is a problem everybody can see coming, and that's a test of leadership. Can you focus on the things that are important but not urgent? Because even though they may not be urgent today, election day is not today, they will be urgent soon enough. And when they become urgent, you can't suddenly come up with a solution. So this is, in addition to the other three tests we have, which is the economy, COVID, and America's racial profile at the moment, we have this fourth test coming, which is, can there be a peaceful transfer of power or a maintenance of power with the incumbent which makes all people who are on the other side of the issue, which is to say those people who would not like Donald Trump to be reelected, make them feel like the process was safe. That is the hallmark of American democracy. It was the thing the country was founded on, that we could have peaceful transfers of power with no monkey business. That's a big test facing this country.
You know, the president has talked about his generals and his relationship with the military. And I remember in 2016, one of the things President Obama was faulted for was his frayed relationship with the military. This week, we had this extraordinary moment where the president's top military advisor, Mark Milley, the chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff, go on camera and issue an apology for wearing his fatigues and standing alongside the president in this photo op in Lafayette Square. Have you seen, you know, a fraying of the relationship on that front? Is that claim gone?
Well, you know, what I focus on is the early lines in the president's speech at West Point. He said he was there on behalf of the nation. And that's where the fraying takes place, because General Milley was worried that he was brought to Lafayette Square on behalf of the Trump reelection campaign. The president has a duty to represent the entire nation, and the military takes that very seriously, and that's where some of the fraying has gone. Also, of course, the president's been very tough on some of his generals about the way they've prosecuted some of America's recent wars.
John Dickerson, it's an interesting read. Thank you so much. Great.